French Defence Minister Sébastien Lecornu has arrived today in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, where he's holding talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky, as well as his Ukrainian opposite number, Oleksiy Reznikov. Well, he's expected to discuss what additional military support France can provide Ukraine and to express the French government's unfailing support for the country, which has been under Russian invasion since the 24th of February. Well, during these past 10 months, France has supplied Ukraine with Caesar cannons, anti-tank missiles, air defence missile batteries and rocket launchers. It is also training some 2,000 Ukrainian troops on French soil. Well, let's get more now from our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, what are the key objectives of this visit, would you say?
Well, Tom, you in a way you've answered your own question there with that list of weaponry that France has provided over the last few months. It's weapons, most of all, that Ukraine wants. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was in the United States just a week or so ago, and he made clear in his address to Congress and his conversations with US President Joe Biden that weapons, 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 and air defense are what Ukraine needs at the moment. That is precisely what Zelensky is going to be talking about with Sébastien Lecornu this afternoon. He will, first of all, I think, say that Ukraine is extremely grateful for the quality of the weaponry that France has supplied so far. There's been a lot of praise in Ukraine for the Caesar self-propelled howitzers, of which France has supplied 18. But also, too, they've been getting air defense systems, which they really need at the moment. And I think perhaps first and foremost, Zelensky will put the accent on that. What can France do to help Ukraine improve its air defense as it comes under this relentless bombardment by Russian missiles over the last few weeks? France is providing, I think, 2 air defense weapon systems at the moment. But honestly, I think France's biggest problem is not so much a lack of will to provide Ukraine with these weapon systems, but its ability to do so. Its own system, its procurement system, is coming under challenge as a consequence of the war in Ukraine. For instance, if you take the Caesars, 25% of all France's Caesars have now gone to Ukraine. And I think it's almost the same for their multiple launch rocket systems as well. So it's a major challenge for the French.
Indeed, and the French have, as we've been saying, already given considerable amounts of weaponry to Ukraine. And yet criticism persists, doesn't it, there in Ukraine of France and its response to the war. Why is that?
It's certainly the case that there has been criticism. I think there's less criticism now, Tom, than there has been in the past, particularly over the summer, when Ukraine was really under an awful lot of pressure from the Russians and desperately needed weaponry as soon as possible. And one of the criticisms that Ukraine made was that Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, was too busy spending time trying to engage in talks with Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, and not concentrating enough on providing Ukraine with the weaponry to fend off the Russian forces. And the suggestion made by Emmanuel Macron that the West needed to give Vladimir Putin an off-ramp so he could get out of the war in Ukraine without being humiliated went down really badly in Ukraine. But, at least until fairly recently, there was substance to the criticism that France hadn't been providing as much as other countries. An independent German study done at the end of October suggested that France was 13th in the list of countries providing weaponry to Ukraine, behind even Latvia and Denmark. That, I think, has changed substantially since then. The supply of the Caesars that I was talking to you about, the multiple launch rocket systems, and also air defense. And Lecornu says it was never true anyway, that France has always been in the top 5. But I think now France has pretty much put those major criticisms to rest.
And just before we go, Rob, what is the situation on the ground right now? What are the main developments in Ukraine?
Well, this is another of the issues I think Zelensky and Reznikov, the defense minister of Ukraine, will be talking about with Lecornu, that they want to maintain their offensive, a counter-offensive against the Russians. There has been much talk about there being a stalemate at the moment. That would suit the Russians. It wouldn't suit the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians want to use the freeze that's beginning to set in eastern Ukraine now the colder temperatures, to renew their counteroffensives. And we've been seeing that particularly in the northeast, in the area of Luhansk, particularly against the towns of Svatove and Krimina, which were taken by the Russians at the beginning of the war, but are under now immense pressure from the Ukrainians. What the Ukrainians need most of all is artillery and ammunition for that artillery and tanks. And I think those are at least two of the things that Reznikov and Zelensky will be talking about with Sébastien Lecornu this afternoon. What can France do to enable Ukraine to continue and maintain, keep up the tempo of its counteroffensive against the Russians?
OK, well, thank you very much indeed for that. Our Chief Foreign Editor, Rob Parsons. Thank you very much indeed.